Good morning. This is Laurie of Laurie's Sewing, and today we'll be putting the Dritz hem tape onto the bottom of the satin skirt that I've been working on. And then I'm either going to do a sewing machine specialty foot hem, or I will do the hem by hand in much the same way that you would use the other foot to do the specialty hem with on the sewing machine. I haven't decided how I want to do that yet. So that will happen. Once this is hemmed, I will then create the buttonholes on the front and apply the buttons, and the skirt will be complete. After I've finished with those two things, three really, hem, buttonholes, buttons, I will hem the overlay and the entire piece will be done. So to start with, today I'm going to change out my Bernina 0 foot right here for my Bernina number 5 right here. And there are some differences I'll show you. I mean, quite obviously there are some differences. It would be strange if there were not. Okay, and they just hop onto that post. And in this case, that is really all I need to do. I do want to make sure that my needle thread has gone toward the back of the machine through the foot and to the back. Okay, I also want to take my small paintbrush. This is just a really inexpensive 1/4 inch paintbrush, and clear out any potential lint from around the bobbin area. That is something I just do that every time I come to the sewing room. Every single time. Then I will take one of these lint rollers and just pick up any lint lingering around the area where I sew. Oh, whoop. And of course fling the item onto the floor, because that's part of the process apparently. Okay. Normally I do this before I even have everything here, but I just wanted it to be ready to go. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this hem tape from the card, which of course you know I'm not going to throw away. I'm hanging on to it. I always do. They go in my, the little ones go in my hazel bag. They're just so darned handy. And then I'm just going to put this in my lap, the excess, and I will start at the front on the facing. The facing is folded back. I do need to remove one of these pins right here. So the facing is folded back, and I'm going to open it out so that I can apply this hem tape to the flat part of the entire hem. And I will split the skirt fabric and the hem tape right underneath the sewing needle, or the foot I mean, so that the needle set at a zigzag stitch will enter the fabric and then swing over and enter the lace tape. And it's swinging over the top of that bar that runs right down the middle of this foot. So that is how I will attach it, and here we go. So I don't know if you can see, but that's how it's working right there. I'll zoom in a little bit. Right. Nope, too far. So, right here, this is attached to the fabric. I'll continue all the way around. I'm keeping my eye right here so that I can see between this piece of fabric and this piece of lace tape. Now I don't know if it's showing up. Okay, so here we go. Going to drop my needle just to keep everything safe while I deal with this. So I'm just going to snip the remaining off and remove the threads at the beginning and the end. Okay. So here on the end, it just didn't quite attach, so I'm going to restitch just a bit. And reverse, just to keep it in place. Clip these threads. All right, there we go. Okay, let me move my machine back a little bit. And we can take a look. And again, I will press it before I do anything. But that is the application of the hem tape. Now to start, I will be stitching the facing back on itself with some pins. Okay, so if these were actual stitches, I would just simply flip this around. Of course, I would have caught all of the fabric so that none of that lace tape would be showing. And that's on the inside. I don't need to stitch the lace tape because it's going to be hidden under here and none of this will fray. But what that does is it allows me then to very nicely turn under as much of the fabric as I want to, depending on how much fabric I take up in the facing. And it just naturally will roll in by that amount. I can then press it, pin it, clip it however I want to, and then turn this way and then make just a small hem right along that edge with just a small bite of fabric on the outside. It just keeps everything nice and neat. There'll be no fraying, and the hem will be very easy to do, either by hand or on the sewing machine, which I think I'll do by hand. So all I need to do is press this flat at the machine like this, or at the iron. Just press and then determine how much on each of the two facings I need to stitch to get the proper hem, and then stitch those both, and then flip under the remaining, press it down, and go from there. So when I come back, I'll show you what it looks like, and we'll make those stitches. I'll need to remove this foot and replace it with my normal sewing foot for the facing stitching, and we'll get busy. Alright, and in the case of stitching back the facing, I will be using a straight stitch, not a zigzag stitch. So, it's been pressed and marked, and all I have to do is fold this back and stitch along this line. And we'll go from there. There we go, and then that can just be pressed. It'll be nice and tidy once you get these corners pushed in. And double check to make sure that we're folding up on that spot right there. We appear to be right on target. Okay, so I will go press up the hem, and then I've decided I'm going to do this by hand. So I'm ready to start doing the hem, and I want to choose my sewing needle. I'm going to be doing it by hand. So the way I'm going to choose my needle is I'm going to take a couple. I have this one, and then I have some other ones in my little needle book. Let's see, I need something smaller than that one, so maybe this one. The rest of them are basically the same size. The only difference is this one is a crewel, and it has a little bit more of an elongated eye, and it's smooth and small, so I may try that as well. And I'm just going to use the thread off of my sewing machine, and I just need to get a piece of scrap. This is my cabbage. Okay, so I have some scrap fabric. And see, I'll start with the biggest needle, work my way down. Okay, while the stitch itself is quite invisible, the needle is way too big. So I will be doing another test. Just cut this off. Here is this one. This feels a lot nicer stitching. It's a much, the needle itself is smooth. It's not as rough as the other needle was. And my stitch is even more invisible. So I think it's the crewel. I'm not even going to check the other needle. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go into the lace tape and then into the skirt, just a tiny little bite. Okay, I think that There we go. Now I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. When I say I'm going into the lace tape, so you can see that along the top edge and the bottom edge, or both side edges if you prefer, there is a very small lacy edge. And I'm just taking my sewing needle, and this will be exaggerated, of course, but that's what I'm doing right there. Just going into that edge, and then after I've done that, I pull the thread through, and then I go into the fabric, and then I come back into the lace tape, and then just like that. Alright, so the hem is finished on the skirt. I don't know if that's going to show up, but this is what it looks like on the inside, and here is the outside. I have also pressed that as it should be pressed with a press cloth. Okay, next I will be marking buttonholes. We have decided that we will do these two, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5 on the front. And then the rest of the buttons will simply be decorative. There won't be a buttonhole to accompany that button. And we were going to leave a space of, I'll have to look in the pattern, I believe it was 5 inches from the bottom would be the last button. So, in case you can't tell, I'm searching for the pattern, which I believe is over here. Shockingly, in the pattern box where it's supposed to be, but my notes for the buttons and buttonholes are in here. Okay. And in case you need a reminder, this is the pattern from which this skirt came. It is Easy McCall's number 7526. This happens to be the size AX for 6'8", but I had to make a mock-up because my daughter is not a size 4. She's smaller than a size 4. And the measurements for View C skirt would include the waist and then the hip and the length. So when I made the mock-up, I wrote on the mock-up itself, which is made from Kona cotton. I made all my measurements and I made the notes on that particular piece of fabric. And then I took the entire thing apart after she tried it on so that I could then use it as a pattern for future purposes. So the first skirt for her that I made was View C out of a vintage baby whale corduroy printed with daisies. And the one thing about a corduroy is you need to remember there is some stretch, and so when I was making the mock-up I had to keep that in mind and kind of decide how much stretch and which direction the stretch was going to go so that the waistband would not stretch out of shape and the buttonholes would not sag, even though there's a lot of stabilizer behind them. Corduroy has the tendency, if you've ever worn corduroy pants that fit beautifully when you try them on, but by the end of the day they just look like an old bag. That's part of the reason. But anyway, that skirt she loves it. She wears it a lot. But we decided we wanted to make a more formal skirt using the mock-up that I made for View C, and that is what this satin long skirt ended up being. Okay, so now we decided that we were going to have the buttons 2 inches apart and 5 inches from the bottom of the hem. So the very last button will go right there. And I will mark it in just a moment. Tomorrow is my birthday, if I haven't already said that today. I know I've been saying it all week. And I received a package from my daughter in Oregon, and she's texting me. So I will read the text, respond, and I'll be right back. All right. Birthdays are fun, aren't they? I love getting mail and packages, and it's just fun. So in this little segment, I've decided that I'm going to test out the buttonholes. I'm going to make some, test buttonholes. I'm checking the size of the button on that buttonhole foot. But the problem that I encountered later after I did these tests, I really didn't think about this, but the fabric for the test buttonholes and the thickness of the waistband was just crazy. This is me talking about the buttonhole feature on my sewing machine. And if you have any questions about it, just drop me a comment and I'll go over it in a different video. But anyway, so I'm threading it, I'm making a buttonhole that I feel should fit the button, however it doesn't. I ended up doing 3 test buttonholes on this satin. I just did not think about the fact that I was going to be cutting buttonholes on 8 layers of fabric. So actually 4 layers of fabric and 2 layers of, no, yeah, 6 layers of fabric. I keep saying 8, it was 6. So it's 4 layers of fabric and 2 layers of interfacing, and the thickness of that made the buttonhole respond differently, and it needed to be slightly bigger. So I'm going to need to adjust both that I did actually do on the waistband of the skirt. I have not cut open the buttonholes that I did on the front facing of the skirt. I'm going to wait today and make sure that everything is good. However, here I'm just kind of marking a new test piece with my chalk wheel. I found that chalk in the chalk wheel works so well on that satin. Okay, and I think this is the 3rd buttonhole that I tested. I'm just making sure that I kind of have an idea of the size. Okay, and it's hard to tell even when it's not sped up, but it was still, the button was still struggling to get through the buttonhole. So I fiddled around with it, made some adjustments, but still in the end I forgot that the width or the thickness of that fabric on the waistband was going to cause problems. Alright, so I'm going to take this buttonhole right here that I made, the bottom one, and I'm going to use it as my guide. I want to see if what I drew and what I'm about to make match up. Yep. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to do this top buttonhole, and we'll see how it fits the buttons. Okay. There, that's getting there. There's a little bit more have to cut a few more threads, but I did manage to get it through, so that's good. Okay, excellent, very good. All right, so I've got a phone call to make, and I'll get back to this in just a minute. I need to trim that thread, it's bugging me. Perfect, well, getting there. Perfect is kind of a weird word. Okay. So this section was a little bit chaotic. There were a few mechanical malfunctions that I had to work through. So I decided to just do the voiceover instead of having all my chatter as I was doing this. I'm using a semi-flex aluminum buttonhole guide here. If you use one, decide to get one, have one, you can also use it to space your seedlings or your seeds in your garden. Also, they will slide out of your measurement. So triple check. I think I checked and I double checked and I triple checked and then I went back and started all over again, because the slightest little thing, I had my sleeve on my right arm kept getting hung on that last piece of the semi-flex and would just pull the whole thing out of, I had it set for 2 inches, and it would just, it happened to me over and over again. So I just kept at it, and then I marked each of the buttonhole placement spots with my Chocopel chalk marker, and then I used a ruler to make sure. I think I started to stitch here, and then I thought, no, I'm going to measure. I wanted to make sure that each one was exactly the same distance from the edge of the facing, and I wasn't confident. And as it turned out, there was one spot sort of down at the bottom, like between the 5th and 6th buttonhole, that was slightly off. It would have made a difference. So again, measure, 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 check, 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 and then do your stitching and your sewing. Now what happened here, this is one of those instances, George acted like a thread had looped over the hook on the bobbin, but it did not, it wasn't like that. So I cleaned him up just like I would. George is my sewing machine, and every time that happens, I just clean it. I get the brush and I clean the lint and I do all the stuff and I rethread the sewing machine and I redo the bobbin. Everything was fine, but I decided to just use the number 3 buttonhole foot, which looks like a more traditional sewing foot, but it is a buttonhole foot. And I discovered it was much easier for me to see. I didn't need to use the flashlight on my phone. I didn't have issues trying to figure it out. Now what happened here is George acted like I had set the stitch length to 5, more like a basting stitch. So I had to turn my machine off, turn it back on, and then everything was great. For the rest of the buttonholes, I just went right on through without any more problems. And it is nice to have the option to use that type of sewing for a buttonhole foot to be that easy to use. I might have used the other foot if I were sewing the buttons on with the sewing machine, but these are metal buttons with a shank, and I'll be doing that by hand. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to use this one. I can see it. It's so much easier, and it doesn't have to be a struggle. It's already a struggle enough, so I didn't want this to become an issue. Okay guys, so here's the thing. I got the buttonholes made that I think we agreed to. I think we agreed to 6 down the front, and then the rest would just be decorative buttons. But I need Jessica to try it on before I place the buttons. Because I'm not able to finish this until tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this project. This is my Valentine's Day project that I'll be doing for myself, my sister, and my 2 daughters. So I have 4 tabletop pieces, or as they are known in the quilting world, flimsies. So I have 4 flimsies, and one is for each of us. So here they all are. This would go this way, right? I think I've got one turned. That's okay. They're all identical. And this would be your everyday table topper. At this stage, they are all the same size. They will, of course, get a little bit smaller in the process of making, and then they'll get a little bit bigger in the process of making because of binding. But let's see here. They are, so they're 21 by 17, 21 wide, 17 long, or 17 long, 21 wide, however you want to measure them. And of course, the squaring up process will take place because, you know, when you have that stair-steppy kind of thing, you have to take care of that, and you lose a little bit on both of the sides of your flimsy. So these will be squared up, and then the back is going to be a piece of canvas. I wanted it to at least replicate in some way a drop cloth. I like that rustic look, and this particular jelly roll collection is a bit rustic, and with the wine theme, the colors, and all of that, you just kind of have a little bit of a rustic look. And I loved the canvas. It's called Rose something. It's a 6-ounce canvas that is called a drop cloth, and I ordered it on Amazon. I'm trying to remember now how many yards I actually purchased. Let's see if I can figure that out real quick. I don't think I still have the paperwork. That is plenty to make, you know, a back for each of these. And it's a lovely, lovely color. I love how it just has that rustic, it's got, you know, it's shot with different colors, those little shot marks. I don't know if they're showing up. Okay, and on the back of the drop cloth, I am going to do a heart-shaped applique. This canvas that I want to do a fairly large sized heart-shaped applique on the back, and I'm calling it the clearly obvious Wine and Roses table topper. Table toppers or toppers can come in all different sizes, shapes. This one is one that I designed, the apple butter, biscuits, and sweet tea red work. And I use it in my kitchen to protect my hutch. It has a marble surface, and I had a ceramic herb pot that was scratching the marble, and this table topper has proven very helpful in preventing that damage. It washes really well. I use Warm and Natural. I will use Warm and Natural in the Wine and Roses table toppers. The canvas should be just fine in the washing machine. I'm very pleased with the way that works. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. We'd love to have you. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.